Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, almost 9,500 sworn personnel, almost 3,000 civilian personnel, and the man at the helm for the last 3 years has been Chief Michael Moore. It's so nice to be in your office.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here, and it's a great opportunity.
What are some of the changes that have happened since you've been at the helm, and what are some of the things that you walked into and you realized these are good foundational things that we need to keep in place?
We're in good shape. I inherited a department that was reform-minded. It was referenced in the then President Obama's 21st century policing reforms, and the pillars that were there, showcased what LAPD was doing for building trust in communities, for community engagement, for being problem solvers, but recognizing that we have a shared responsibility for public safety, and that also on the enforcement, that it was smart, that it was focused, it was data informed. So that's what I inherited. So we set on a course of continued reform and continued work to lessen the instances of use of force, particularly deadly force, to improve our efforts of dealing with persons experiencing mental illness, to really be a part of the solution for persons experiencing homelessness, both for providing them services and support, but also improving the safety and the sense of safety of communities in which these homeless encampments and persons who are living in public places that they're wrestling with.
So the community policing, I know that program was in place. I would imagine that it's actually ramped up. And how is it going at this moment in time?
Well, community policing in Los Angeles is the entire organization. It's institutionalized. It's institutionalized across every aspect of what we do. There's a community safety partnership, which was and is an effort within 10 of our communities most impacted by violent crime, historic distrust of the police, and a police response in the past that was bring more officers, bring more enforcement as a means of restoring order and lessening the loss of life and the instances of violence. And Chief Beck, along with Connie Rice and others, came with a concept of rather than implying more enforcement, how do we build and strengthen those communities through supporting them and working in a partnership and a shared responsibility of bringing city services, of bringing needed resources so that the safety of those communities is improved, the confidence of those communities in themselves and their ability to deal with disorder and minor acts of discord can be resolved other than resorting to arrest, other than resorting to a police presence. So that community safety partnership across those 10 areas which we've studied and seen that reduces violent crime, improves public trust, and reduces arrests and use of force, that has continued. It's not window dressing, it's not fringe. This is a key component of how we're going to learn as an organization how to enculturate in us the values that we see in addressing violence and addressing community safety through a lens that is much broader than an enforcement lens.
Along those lines, you had a budget crisis that has now somewhat abated in terms of what we believe the economics of Los Angeles is. Is that going to help you in this coming year, and are you looking forward to being able to replace a lot of those positions that no longer were able to be replaced last year and move some of these positive programs forward?
Yes, so I'm grateful for the federal relief monies that came to the city that allowed the city to begin to restore some of its basic operations. The core function of city government is public safety.
Right.
And in this instance, with President Biden's bill, his stimulus package that came to the city, it allowed the city to do two things. First, it allowed it to pay back its debt and establish a responsible reserve, because we're an earthquake away from a natural disaster that matches this pandemic. Secondly, it allowed it to begin investing in core services such as policing. So we have begun our first class after nearly 6 months without one. Our effort, and this is to all the members who are watching this, we're hiring. We hope to hire 740 personnel, recruits, qualified individuals to become the next generation of LA police officers.
So much good news, but there are some things to deal with, and you mentioned that. The rising level of crime, could be very directly related to the issues of the pandemic, but also the prisoners that have been released. And so there's some controversy about who's doing what, why they're doing it, how it's affecting the public at large, how it's affecting the law enforcement and the judicial system. Is there any kind of move forward with any kind of cooperative? I know that there's even some controversy amongst those in our criminal justice system here in Los Angeles and our law enforcement. There's some differing of opinions that sometimes get vocal, and sometimes obviously have trickle down. I'm trying to be very kind about all of this.
Very diplomatic.
Okay, but you know exactly what I'm saying.
I think I have an understanding.
Okay, so what is going on there, and how are we faring with it, and what are the moving forward steps that are being taken?
Well, first of all, the criminal debate, dialogue, discord about the criminal justice system is not something that just brought about by the pandemic. This is, as a state, as a region, we've, I think, led the country in criminal justice reform many times with with grand ambition and very desired outcomes. We want to see justice. We want to see victims that are protected. We want to see consequences for those that harm others and victimize others. But we also want to see that people who commit offenses, how do we rehabilitate them? How do we bring them back into society? And then when they're reintroduced into society, how do we keep them on a good path? A sense that people can go out and commit crimes with little regard. Right. It's real. It's palpable. Now, this is not to indict anyone or meant to embarrass. It's instead to say, but how do we go forward? So this is constantly an evolution of what's working, what's not working, and that's what LAPD's, I think, how we've done so well over time, is we recognize it's not about blame, it's about the evolution. Sometimes things you should be able to anticipate, things that you can't, but what are we doing about it? Let's talk about today, let's talk about going forward. That's our responsibility to the people of the city.
And along those lines, I mean, you have this bird's eye view, and you also have this big picture vision because of the people that you interact with and the meetings that you're in and even the conversations that you could have. But on the other side of that, you also have your rank and file.
I do.
How are they feeling, and what are you saying to them?
Part of that is as a chief, is making sure that our people feel supported, and we're trying, and our command staff. But also recognizing that, reminding them that part of this emotion, part of this is because people are so hurt. And they're so injured by not just the pandemic, but by wrongs that exist in our society. And they don't have to shoulder that, but yet they do, because they wear this badge, they wear this uniform. And so, say hello to an officer. And we've seen 100 of our people, 100 of them chose to leave this organization, and many of them chose to leave the profession. That's a grievous injury. But when they leave the profession entirely, the profession loses and our communities lose.
But it can't be easy to be an officer.
It is. This is one of the most difficult periods of time. It's unfair. It's not right. You hear people express hate and just tremendous anger, and to center it on individuals, to center it on a profession of service, deeply disturbing. So this is brand new ground, and we've seen the calls to our psychologists and our peer support, our clergy, go through the roof. And it sets the stage for who's coming to, how fertile is the ground for people to come to this profession. It signals that, this is not an automatic that people want to be cops, that they want to get into this turmoil and face a very turbulent existence, and to be criticized, and to have their families criticized, and to have their families face open ridicule in public places, in schools, and in churches, and in houses of worship, and other places. So with that, though, we've got to take a step back and take a deep breath and build with them, that remind them of why they chose this profession. Remind them of why it matters. There are 4 million people in the city, and they depend on this department. We're an organization committed to the people of the city, and we're going to show them why this is the greatest department in American policing. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Moore. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.